fights with passion, and he inspires.
Are you ready for a war?
All right, welcome back to From 8 Arbitration. And first and foremost, I want to say this. If you pray, I ask that you pray for my friend and my brother, Mr. James Henry, in the passing of his father, Reverend Luther Leon Henry Jr. And he passed away August 21st. And you could tell that James, it was heavy on him when we were going places, and we were in California and then we were in Jersey. And you could tell that my brother, that it was weighing on him. His father was ill and had passed away. And so I ask that you pray. If you pray for my brother, my friend, James Henry, in the passing of his father. And that man's got a lot on him right now. And this is something that had been going along. His father had gotten extremely ill. And still, you're not ready. You're not ready for the passing of a parent. And so if you pray, like I say, pray for James Henry and his family. And I love that guy with all my heart. I don't think there's anybody walking with more integrity than James Henry. And to see that and to know that my brother's hurting, it hurts me. And so I ask that you pray. If you don't, whatever you do that. Okay? Like James, don't like James. We can still be human right here. Okay? And so say a prayer for my friend, my brother, James Henry. And he knows that I love him very much, and I've been praying for him. But it's tough. Reverend Luther Leon Henry Jr. And so say a prayer for my friend, okay? Today, Labor Day. And I think that labor is the backbone of this country. I think that it is the American worker that has built this country. And Labor Day is special to us, our brothers and sisters in labor, whichever labor you're in. Is day for us to set aside and to thank those of us who do the work, because we are the ones who do the work. And so I hope everybody has had a fantastic Labor Day. A lot of marches around the country I've seen. And so I hope everybody has had a happy Labor Day. It's about the worker. And I think that our workers should be paid wages and benefits, and we should have working conditions that are indicative of what we have done and what we continue to do. And so it's a good day for us, a good day to recognize us, the working class, Labor Day. And so I hope y'all are having a fantastic Labor Day, a day off from doing what we do. Like I said, the American worker is the backbone of this country. And we have built it what it is today. Not those in suits, not those sitting at desks. It's the worker, us, doing the work. And so this is for us. This day is for us. And so happy Labor Day. I'm going to have an especially long episode. This is going to be the ultimate salted peanuts. I've got a lot of stuff to cover. I'm going to do some shout outs. I did an episode Wednesday on the Lion's Den. And it had a site. It's from Branch 3 in Buffalo, New York. And it was a fantastic site, arbitration decision. I read that, and then I also got into some SPM scanning stuff, because that's going on right now. That's a hot topic. I really wish my union would do more for us about SPM scans. I'll get into that, why I think they're not later on, okay? But I'm going to do the same episode. And then I'm going to cover some other stuff. We got a lot of deems desirable out there right now. I'm going to cover deems as well and some other things. It's going to be a long episode today. So I'm going to go over this site from Branch 3. Fantastic read. Some SPM things. We're going to attack the scanners. And then some deems desirable. I'm going to go over that. Got some shout outs. We're going to do that. So yeah, it's going to be a long episode. It's going to be a long episode today. Let's get into some shout outs, all right? October 26th, and I've been talking about this a while. The reason I'm going to do that, though, what I did Wednesday, and this is funny, the episode that I did Wednesday on the Lion's Den, the reason I'm repeating that is because I had a lot of people reach out and say, hey, my carriers don't listen to Wednesday because they think it's boring. They want to hear, the Sunday Corey. And so can you do it again Sunday so they'll listen to that? So I thought that was funny. That didn't hurt my feelings because, look, Wednesday's strictly educational. We're going over route inspection stuff right now. Nothing more boring than route count and inspection. There's nothing more. I read an entire book on Wednesdays. So I had a lot of people say, hey, I'm out on that. Now, I'm not going to sit here and listen to an hour of reading. And so I get it. But it's solely for educational purposes. It's solely for the CLC. And so the Lions Den on Wednesday, so there's like, can you do it again Sunday so my people listen? So that's the reason I'm doing it again today. So let's get back to it. October 26th, Colts versus the Titans, MDA. Join the NALC on the Indianapolis Colts field for the pregame full field flag experience during the national anthem. So if you got kids, like pro football, like football period, take them. You're going to get down on the field and they can hold the flag. Now that's awesome. So think about that. We'll be raising money for Muscular Dystrophy Association. More information, Tim Houck, 260-760-3712. That's $100. More information, Tim Houck, 260-760-3712. $100. Checks payable to Tim Houck. Send checks 116 Emily, Emilie, Pine Place. I'll read that again. Send checks 116 Emily, Emilie, Pine Place, Fort Wayne, Indiana, 46804. So let's join the NLC on the Indianapolis Colts field for the pregame full field flag experience during the national anthem. October 26th, Colts versus the Titans. Got a shout out. The person I want to shout out is my local branch 763 VP, Charles Wright. He started the post office back in the TE days. He became one of the few that stuck it out through the DOS award, which came with a $6 hour pay cut to become a CCA. Something I know I wouldn't have done. In that time, he continued to fight for his brothers and sisters. I cannot thank him enough for all he has done for the office as he continues to defend each and every one of us while working another job after delivering all day. This man has been a role model, a mentor, and at times a therapist. He is one of a few that reached out and checked on me when I was going through my separation, child custody, and cancer treatments. He has offered encouragement and support as I've started my own business venture and helped educate the office more. So personally, Charles, from one dad to another, thank you for being a model husband, father, mentor, steward, and VP. Much love from Tiger Station and Brent 763. And so that's the VP, Charles Wright. That's an awesome shout out right there. That's going above and beyond. I get a lot that are the exact opposite of that. Their stewards don't care. Branch presidents don't care. Formal A's don't care. Business agents don't give a shit. That's beautiful right there. That's somebody who's going above and beyond. When I talk to you about loving the city letter carrier, that's what it's all about. Full stop. Love the city letter carrier. If you love the city letter carrier, you will succeed. Why? Because you'll be driven to succeed. If you love the city letter carrier, that's what it's all about. That individual right there loves the city letter carrier. Just by that testimonial right there, loves the city letter carrier. That's awesome. That's a good one. That's it for the shout outs. I've got more, and I'll have to pull them up later. But this episode's going to be so long that we're going to get right to it. So let's get into these decisions. The first one is going to be from Branch 3 in Buffalo. And it's a fantastic decision. And you'll hear about it, what it's about when you're talking about this geofence. We've been dealing with these things forever, back when the Our Office time came out. As a union, I think we failed miserably. from the upper echelon. We failed miserably. That's the reason I'm so excited about when James Henry wins. He's getting the director of education put back in place. With the director of education, that's going to be full-time. What's happening now on the workroom floor and how we're going to address it. When that came out with the AVP talking about these metrics, hour office time, stationary events, stuff like that. When that came out, we should have immediately started putting things out to educate our members. That's how I feel. We did a lot of it from 8 arbitration. I had guests on here talking about hour office time. We were reading decisions based on hour office time. I think that our union failed us miserably from the top. This is one of those things, the geofence. And this arbitrator kind of makes fun of it, the invisible fence, as she puts it. It's because you have to have courage to take things forward. You got to understand, arbitration is what it is. It's 50-50. Anytime you go in, I don't care how good your case is, how bad your case is. Well, I do care how bad your case is, but arbitration is always 50-50. That's the reason I got so angry at my president for talking about what he's going to do, what he's going to get. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, because you cannot guarantee me that. You can't tell me that. You can say what you're going to attempt to do, that you're going to attempt to do these things. That's what you can say. But do not tell me that these things are going to happen or this. You set yourself up for failure. But, here's an individual that's only had one arbitration. He does not understand arbitration. The only thing he understands about arbitration is what he's been told. That's a huge difference between those that have been told what arbitration is about and those that have been in arbitration. There's a big difference. The only thing he knows about arbitration is what he's been told. He's only had one. And he's not had any at national. He's had a stipulated one, a mediation. But so anything he knows about arbitration is things that he's been told about arbitration. He's not sat in that seat. You got James Henry, several hundred. I've had over 100 and something, 150. So there's a big difference. But arbitration is always 50-50. Anytime I went into arbitration, if somebody was removed and they said, hey, what are my chances? 50-50. If I've got 1 million procedural due process violations, the management failed to meet just cause, there's no contentions, nothing, 50-50. That's all I'll ever say, because it's arbitrate. I've come out too many times. I've lost 40, which I thought I've won. So that should tell you something. But anyway, this is a beautiful decision. I love reading decisions. As boring as that sounds, I'm going to read 2 more when we're getting into the Deems portion. But I love reading arbitrators' decisions, good or bad. It gives me an idea of management's arguments. They're generally the same. The union's arguments, generally the same. Issue statements, what are we looking at when you talk about an issue statement? As a new advocate, as a new shop steward, looking at arbitrators' decisions. When you say, deems desirable, when we talk about that later, deems desirable, where would I even start? And so I love reading decisions, as boring as it is. And so since people reached out and said that people don't listen to Wednesday, I'm fixing to bore you again. But I love this decision. It's a great decision. Again, it's out of Buffalo, Branch 3. Our advocate was Andrew Harrison, and I hear that he's a new advocate. Andrew, fantastic job. Fantastic job on this. Even if management has no contentions, it's always 50-50. Here, management didn't have any contentions. You think, well, that's going to be a shoe-in. No, it's not. Because you still have to sell it to the arbitrator that they're wrong and we're right. Just because they have no contentions means more than likely they're not going to come testify. But you still have to be right. You still have to sell the position. You don't forfeit the position. Now, I will always say, management has failed in meeting, failed in contending, so they have forfeit their position. A lot of arbitrators don't feel that. They say, hey, that may be so. I'm not going to let them come in here and testify. It's all on you. But that burden on a contract case still rests with the union. So you're going to have to meet that burden, regardless if they're in here or not. So, good job, Andrew Harrison. So here we go. Award summary. The grievance is sustained. Management shall immediately rescind the instruction regarding scanning undeliverable items based on the cyber fence invisible barrier. Future instructions regarding the cyber fence must comply with the national agreement, specifically Articles 3 and 5, regarding change of working conditions. Management shall comply with M39 regarding surveillance of carriers and all substantive and procedural requirements of Article 15 regarding investigating and issuing discipline based on any way upon GPS data. Management shall cease and desist from using GPS data alone and the sole basis for discipline. This arbitrator retains jurisdiction over the implementation of the award. Now, why is that important on that last part? Management shall cease and desist from using GPS data alone. She's got that highlighted and underlined. And as the sole basis for discipline, has sole underlined and highlighted. Why is that important? Because right now when you have this SPM scans, that's GPS data. When you have anything based on geofence, that's GPS data. Anything based off stationary events, that's GPS data. So here's a decision where management, here's a decision that Branch 3 has in Buffalo, New York. David Groskopf, the president up there, has a decision now where an arbitrator said management shall cease and desist from using GPS data alone. How important is that for that branch? That is massive for that branch. That an arbitrator says you're going to cease and desist from using GPS data alone. We've got a step forward that says they can't do that. Now you have an arbitrator's decision, binding, that tells management locally in Buffalo, New York, you're going to have to do more than show GPS data. You're going to have to do what Section 134 of the M39 Handbook states. You're going to have to actually get up off your ass and go out there and do something. That's fantastic verbiage for that branch now. Fantastic verbiage. Because, like I said, you got SPM scans running rampant. Stationary events, rampant. You got this, rampant. You've got all these things, geofence, rampant. Now you got a fantastic decision to put in every single case file. If management says, hey, on these SPM scans, when I said I didn't get it, and they said, well, our data, our GPS data shows you did, they're going to say, hey, well, I got this right here. It says you can't use that alone. If I came in here and said, yes, I got it, I just didn't want to scan it, now you've got something other than GPS data. You've got me acknowledging that I got it and refuse to scan it, which we will never do. Because to me, if I'm past it, I'm past it. We'll get into that in a second. But the cease and desist, that's what you're looking for. We want management to stop and not do it again. I got on this rant on Wednesday about the cease and desist. How important the cease and desist is to us. It's contractual, the cease and desist. It's in Article 41. It talks about cease and desist. When it becomes egregious, we can ask for an escalated monetary award, monetary compensation. So it's contractual, the cease and desist. It's actually in the JCAM. Both parties have agreed to the cease and desist, or else it would not be in the JCAM, the Joint Contract Administration Manual. Somebody sent me a resolution, the DRT, and they were happy with the resolution, and it was a good resolution. It was funny, though, the resolution. The links that we will go to now not to issue a cease and desist. It was a route count and inspection grievance, and they did a fantastic job. They have like 20 issues, and it's when we were going over the route count and inspection, and I said, grieve everything. I'm grieving every single thing that they do, because when it goes to arbitration and the 6-day count, and you're going to have all these prior resolutions saying that they failed in doing this, doing that. So the whole thing was fucked up. And so that's what we're going to say to an arbitrator, not fucked up, but you know what I'm saying. And so when you take these things in front of an arbitrator, there's a laundry list of things that management has failed to do. It shows the arbitrator, y'all didn't care about doing a fair 6-day count. Y'all didn't care about that. It's obvious from the beginning that y'all had a predetermined amount that you're going to take out, and you went in there. Procedure be damned. How we're supposed to do things in accordance with Section 2 of the M39. All that be damned. And so it was a fantastic decision. It was about 20 bullet points. Management violated this. Management violated that. Basically, anything that they could have violated in a 6-day count, they violated. On the remedy portion, it says management will comply. Will comply with this. And then the funny part was, at the bottom, like in the same sentence, it says management will comply with section whatever of the M39, and management will stop, underlined, will stop violating this. So they gave us a will stop, which I guess that's fine, but why not just do a cease? You see what I'm saying? We are so hell-bent on not doing what's contractual. There's nothing contractual about a will stop. There's nothing contractual about a will comply. When they sign the JCAM, they acknowledge that they will comply. That's why we have a JCAM. The J is joint. That's what that means. We both came into agreement with it, that we will comply with it. I don't need to remind them that they will comply. Hell, when it was written, they understood that. And so it drives me nuts when I see management will comply. Okay, give that to me then. If I steal something, Corey will comply with section 665 of the ELM. Okay, I'll comply. It's no difference. Violation is a violation. But then come back down under there and said, underline it, highlight it, will stop. Just give me a cease. Give me a cease and desist. But it was a good decision. I mean, the remedy got sent forward. Obviously, management will give you a will stop, because hell, you're probably going to have a joint thing anyway coming up at the beginning of the year. So they don't give a shit now. But that's one of the things that have pissed. Here we go. It chaps my ass every time. But the cease and desist is something that is imperative to the city letter carrier. It is absolutely imperative to the city letter carrier. Do you know who doesn't want it? Management doesn't want it. Lloyd doesn't want it. They do not want the cease and desist because they say that we weaponize the cease and desist. We've talked about this forever. The problem is that our executive vice president, Paul Barner, Ponyboy, has come into an agreement with management that we will no longer issue a cease and desist. That should remove you from your position immediately. He should have been removed, terminated immediately when he did that. Because the union doesn't care. It's all about money, and I've been saying that. Management, postal service, about money. The union saving money. Do you know who's fucked over in all this? The city letter carrier. You know why? Because we're the aggrieved. How many times have I said that? We are the aggrieved here on the workroom floor. Us, the city letter carrier. The union's not aggrieved. You think they give a fuck about that? We are the aggrieved. So therefore we go to our agent and say, hey, look, I am aggrieved here. There's a violation against me. Not against the agent, not against the union. The aggrieved, me, has a grievance. I would like for you to file that for me. Because management is doing something to me, not the agent, to me, that's fucking me over. And I want them to stop. And I don't want them to do it any longer. If you could do that for me, I'd appreciate it. What your agent has said via Paul Barner, we will no longer issue a cease and desist at the DRT. Now that, to me, is termination worthy. Because you have used your position to fuck over the very ones who pay your salary. The very ones who pay your salary, you have chosen to intentionally fuck us over. So your salary should no longer be paid. That's how I feel as a city letter carrier. But I'd said at the time, Wednesday, that we should have gotten something in return, right? If you're going to say that you're going to concede the one thing that I need to help in non-compliance, a cease and desist. If you're going to concede that management will give you 1 million will complies, they don't care. They don't care. And I can't use that to my benefit as an advocate. Like that one arbitrator said, I had the decision on here. Will comply is not a cease and desist. It's a suggestion. A cease and desist now, that's stop and don't do it any longer. So you have something. You conceded away the very thing we needed for compliance. What did we get in return? What did we get in return? Because you just saved the Postal Service hundreds of millions of dollars. What did we get in return? Somebody got something. Somebody got something. What did we get? The city letter carrier. Being as you conceded away the very thing that's going to protect us from rogue management. What did we get? I said Wednesday, we should have gotten something, maybe to the effect of, you will no longer hold my carriers accountable for failing to be quote unquote regular in attendance. We will do away with y'all's requirement to be quote unquote regular in attendance. You want the cease and desist? Give me that. Give me the requirement of my carriers to be quote unquote regular in attendance. And I say quote and unquote because nobody can tell me what that means. If you ask management, what do they say? We expect you to be here when you're scheduled. Then you want perfect attendance. You don't want regular attendance. You want perfect attendance. That's something that will never be attained. So, if you want the cease and desist to save y'all hundreds of millions of dollars, if you want the union to go hand in hand with you to save that money, give me something. Give me this. The carriers will no longer have an expectation of being quote unquote regular in attendance. They just call out when they want to call out. That's what we'll do. What do you think they would say? What do you think that they would tell you if you went into that meeting and said that? We're not doing that. Then why are you so special? Why concede anything to you if you're not willing to concede anything to me? Why is this union operating like that? Look at your president and this TA. The concessions there. Why is the Postal Service so fucking special? They're not. We are. The city letter carrier is the only thing special to me. Hey, I love my job, the Postal Service. Postal management can kiss all my ass. But why are we so hell-bent on protecting them? I will never understand that. Ever. Concede something to me. There will be no requirement to be regular in attendance any longer. You make sure that each manager and supervisor understands that. From this day forward, the carrier has no expectation, no requirement to be regular in attendance. Let's do that. If a carrier's got a sick leave balance, they can use it. Holidays, day after scheduled day off, whatever, doesn't matter. If they've got a sick leave balance, they can use it with no repercussion. How about that? Do you think we would get that? Do you think that they would concede that to us? Or do you think that they'd tell us to get fucked? I think that they'd probably tell us to get fucked. But yet they come to us and say, hey, look, the very thing that y'all need for non-compliance, to make sure that management complies, the very thing that's contractual, we're going to do away with it. The cease and desist. And what do you say, Barner? What do you say about that? I'm in agreement. You don't want anything for that? No. Let's go do it. Let's go tell them. You're going to go in there with me and tell them? I'll go in there with you and tell them. Okay, come on, let's go. Can you imagine that from your union leadership? What the fuck has happened? What the fuck has happened with my agent? As a city letter carrier, I'm going to go deliver tomorrow. The day after holiday. Probably be heavy as hell. Supposed to thunderstorm here in Nashville. I'm going to be walking around in thunderstorms tomorrow, and my agent is fucking me over. That doesn't sit well with me at all. I don't appreciate that. I don't appreciate that. Being fucked over from the agent because we weaponized the cease and desist. Look at what they weaponized against us. And I talk about this all the time. Y'all probably getting tired of hearing about it. But when I see things like the decision that's so fucking beautiful, the cease and desist, and I know that my union is actively undermining me when it comes to non-compliance, something that's decimating the city letter carrier, non-compliance. When I see that they have hijacked the grievance procedure on us, and we're clueless as far as how to fix that. And it's right there in front of you. And I saw a thread the other day, quite comical, where somebody was supporting the CLC, saying they can't wait until we get in there and clean up the grievance procedure and start implementing these things. And people were just all over the CLC. What are they going to fix? How are they going to fix anything? And one individual said, well, if they have, a plan, they need to share it with Renfro and everybody else. To hide that plan just to get elected is this and that. It's right there in front of you, brother. The plan. You have a DRT memo. The DRT memo states what? If you get a backlog of grievances, what are you to do? Activate the backup teams. Really fucking simple. It's not a plan. It's right there. You activate the backup teams. And what did management say about a year ago or so? I told y'all this rant was coming. I knew it was coming. I said all day, don't do it. And here we are in the middle of it. But anyway, because it pisses me off to see light blue done like they're doing. It pisses me off to see us done like we've been doing. Anyway, the DRT memo, it says you activate the backup teams if there's a backlog of grievances. Now, you had James Henry, who was over the DRT. There's about 6,000 grievances at the time at the DRT. He gets removed from that position, and they put Paul Barner in there. Then Paul Barner gets removed from that position, and Renfro puts Dan Toth in there, Director of Retirees, over the DRT. We go from 6,000 cases pending B to over 30,000 cases. Over 30,000 cases. How can that happen? Who's paying attention? Who's watching? The Postal Service has hijacked the grievance procedure, and you will see people defending Renfro like hell on social media. Here's what you do. It's very simple. You activate the backup teams. Management said about a year ago, we're not activating the backup teams. Then we will see you in national arbitration. Period. Right then. Get your case together. We will see you, because I'm not afraid of arbitration. I've been in there hundreds of times in arbitration. I loved it. Your president, once. I love arbitration. So that's where we're at. You have Barner conceding the cease and desist. Nothing, we get nothing in return. And now we're just having to rely on arbitrators to help us out because you got crazy ass shit going on at the DRT. We'll comply. We'll stop. Please stop. We beg you to stop. It's crazy shit, man, but we're fucked and won't be unfucked until we can take over this sumbitch next year and start holding management accountable in national arbitration. And that's what we're going to do. We will, like I said, years ago, we will weaponize arbitration. They want to talk about weaponizing something to cease and desist. We're going to weaponize arbitration. We got to clear up that backlog, activate those B teams, the backups. If they don't want to, go to national level arbitration. Now Renfro's talking about finally we're looking at going to national level arbitration. What happened in between 6,000 cases and 32,000 cases? At what point during that period of time did you say, hey, we might have a problem? 6,000 cases, 32,000 cases. Do you think maybe that they're going to say, hey, implement the C team? Remember when I was talking about the C team when we had people coming out of retirement to fuck us over? Implement the C teams and get rid of those backlogs. Pennies on the dollar. Pennies on the dollar. Do you know who's going to get fucked over by that? The city letter carrier. That's who. The city letter carrier. It's not a strategy, my friend. It's not some hidden game plan. It's right out there in front of you. It's just that we have motherfuckers too cowardly to do anything. Too fucking cowardly to do anything. And we will get rid of the cowardice. Hey, let's get back to this decision. It's really good. And so, here we go. Introduction. Pursuant to the grievance arbitration procedures between the United States Postal Service and the National Association of Letter Carriers, AFL-CIO, the undersigned arbitrator was selected to hear and decide the dispute herein and to render a final and binding opinion and award. The union filed this grievance alleging that the employer violated Articles 3, 5, and 19 via Handbook M39, Section 115, and 134. Now, y'all know what both those are. And Handbook M41, Section 243 of the National Agreement, when they gave the order not to scan parcels in the office once you left the office based on a GPS geofence cyber fence defined area, and that this order constituted a unilateral change in the working conditions. The parties met at step B an impasse and now request a determination by the arbitrator. So, it says the union has the burden of proof as to the merits of the case. The burden of proof is preponderance of evidence. Okay, so the union has the burden of proof as to the merits of the case. Management doesn't show up. They have no contentions. We still carry that burden. We can't just make some outlandish claim and go into arbitration and say, hey, they have no witnesses. They're going to say, but this claim here that you've got, this is completely preposterous. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to side with you. So it's still a very tough thing. Arbitration is tough anyway. Any advocate can tell you that. Arbitration is tough because management's just as convinced they're right as we are. It says witnesses. The following witnesses are sworn and testified as the arbitration hearing for the union. Jim Eisenhart. Now, if you know him, he's a fucking beast. Steward and formerly representative. For management, no witnesses were presented. So management chose not to bring anyone to testify. Okay, so issue. And this is reason as a new steward, I love arbitration decisions. Issue 1. Did management violate Articles 3, 5, and 19 of the National Agreement when they gave the order to not scan parcels in the office once the carriers left the office based on the GPS geofence cyber fence data? If so, what is their remedy? And so, as a new steward, I'm looking for decisions. And I'm saying, hey, there's a geofence thing. Where would I even begin? Here you go. That's why I love arbitration decisions. I used to read DRT decisions like crazy, religiously. Arbitrators' decisions, read them religiously, so that when I go into arbitration now, when I used to, I know exactly where you're going, what you're going to do, what you're going to try to get from us, and so I can prepare my witnesses accordingly. And so you'll have the contractual language, Article 3, Article 5, JCAM 5.1. They've also got a national arbitrator's decision. Arbitrator Bernstein talks about Article 5, Article 15, Article 15.2c, Article 5.2c, JCAM 15.24, Handbook M39 134.21, 134.22, 115.1, 115.3, 115.4, Handbook M41, 243, disposition of forwardable and undeliverable mail. And so, again, as a new steward, if I'm looking for something, there you have it. How will I even attack a geofence or management's instructions? People talk about falsifying scans. Here you go. There's the language that you need. There's the contractual provisions that you'll need. You can just copy and paste that and put it into your contentions. Statement of facts. This grievance arose out of an incident of an ongoing nature. As alleged by the union, management gave repeated orders to letter carriers at the Orchard Park Station, New York, that they should not scan parcels at the office even if they are on a street function. 721 Operational Code. On or about 8/15/2024, Union Steward James Eisenhart was approached by Postmaster Eric Smith and questioned about why he scanned the parcel, which had been taken out on the street, when he returned to the office. Mr. Eisenhart testified that it was practice and policy that letter carriers were to scan parcels that were on hold in the office. Postmaster Smith told Mr. Eisenhart that it was a violation to scan parcels back in the office. Postmaster Smith further advised that he knew where the carrier scanned the packages based on GPS data. This GPS data is used to define a geographical fence or cyber fence. When carriers are outside of this cyber fence and they scan a parcel or other item, the GPS data is recorded through the scanner and management is notified. Mr. Eisenhart advised Postmaster Smith that he had no idea what he was talking about regarding the cyber fence. He further advised the postmaster that he did not understand why he could not scan a parcel that was on hold at the office at the end of the day rather than scanning it in the morning at the office. He felt that the order to scan all parcels during office time at the beginning of the day was improper, contradictory, and was not based on any USPS policy. Further, Union Steward Eisenhart believed that the NELC had not been made aware of any changes to the duties and responsibilities of the carriers as required by Article 5. Now, that is a very educated response. That is a very educated response. When I talk about educating yourself, an educated workforce is a devastating thing, and I've said that since I first started. An educated workforce is a devastating thing. He says, further, Union Steward Eisenhart believed that the NELC had not been made aware of any changes to the duties and responsibilities of the carriers as required by Article 5. Beautiful contention. Mr. Eisenhart filed this grievance on or about 8/15, Exhibit J4, page 11. Mr. Eisenhart submitted a request for information asking for the following. 1. USPS policy, contractual language, manual, and/or publication regarding where, location carriers are required to scan parcels, on hold, forward, etc. And that's a fantastic request, because when management says, hey, that's policy, bam, I need that policy. A lot of times on social media, you'll see people saying, hey, management told me this, request it. Put in a request for it, because believe it or not, and this will surprise some of you, believe it or not, management has a tendency to lie. I know that probably catches a lot of you off guard, because you don't want to think of the people that you work for as being some of the most heinous liars that you will ever see. Believe me, they lie. They lie just to lie. Them and my president are the two biggest liars I've ever seen. I've never seen anybody lie as much as my president, and I worked at the jail for 6 years. I've never seen anybody more dishonest than my president right now, Renfro. Never, ever. And that's saying something. Management, close second. Close second. I've always said they'd rather climb a tree to tell a lie than stand on the ground to tell the truth, and that's how they are. So if they come out on the workroom floor and they say, hey, this is policy, give me that policy. I'm going to put in a request for it. Let's see that policy. You will never get a policy. You will never get a policy. Trust me. 2, contractual language regarding the geofence and its relevance to scanning parcels. Fantastic. Method management is using to determine where location carriers are scanning parcels without visual observation. This request was dated 8/14/2024, Exhibit J3, page 14. Management did not respond to this request for information. Do you know why management did not respond to this request for information? They have no information. All they have is an email from area. That's it. And you're not getting that. All they have is an email from area saying, hey, this geofence, make sure they're doing these things, blah, blah, blah. Well, let me get that policy. No policy. Let me get the contractual language. No contractual language. Method management is you can determine where the location of carriers are scanning parcels without visual observation. It can't do that. You're not going to get anything. It's the perfect catch-22 information request. You can't fulfill it. And if you do give me something, you're damned. So it's a great information request. So if y'all want to know a good information request, there's your one right there. It's the perfect information request by Mr. Eisenhart. Mr. Eisenhart met with Supervisor Oliver Jorge. I guess that's his name. It's Gorges. Mr. Eisenhart raised the concern regarding whether this cyber fence GPS data would be used as a basis for discipline without visual observation of the carriers. Supervisor Jorge did not deny or concur that this was true. Supervisor Jorge did not respond to the substance of the grievance, but rather stated, "It's not my authority. I have nothing to do with this, but just will appeal to the postmaster." Testimony of Mr. Eisenhart, management did not submit contentions at informal step A. And so, as always, new shop stewards, when you go into that meeting, informal step A meeting, and JB is beautiful at this, you have the informal step A meeting, write me a very detailed synopsis of what happened, what transpired in that informal step A meeting, date it the day of the informal step A meeting, and send it to me as the formal A. Okay? Date it, sign it, make sure it's dated, make sure it's signed. Don't just write a statement and send it up to me, because Management's Havoc is going to destroy that. Sign it, date it. Send it up to me with your packet at the formal step A. Here's what happened at the informal step A meeting. We met at so-and-so time. In the meeting, I handed management my contentions, or we discussed the following. Management provided no rebuttal. Management provided no contention. All they stated was, we'll just send it up. Okay? And write that in a very detailed statement. Why? Because it looks very good when you go into arbitration. Because management's going to come in there and do what? They're going to try to come in there and bring in the informal step A for them and put on an entire new dialogue. They're going to start saying all these things. And I'm going to object to them. Hey, we did what we were supposed to do. We put in a statement of what happened at the informal step A meeting. Management chose not to do so. Anything that they testified to now is new argument. I've not heard this. I don't have any idea what they're going to testify to. They have no statement in the file. It's all new argument. And as they say in advocate training, I never used it, but arbitration by ambush. The grievance was moved to formal step A. However, management and the union did not meet at the formal step A, Exhibit J3, page 10. Now, that will be Joint Exhibit 3. Now, you'll have in arbitration, if you're ever looking at arbitration sites, if it's a J, that's joint. Both parties have agreed to this, so that's Joint Exhibit 3. So you're probably going to have the national agreement will be Joint 1. The JCAM will probably be Joint 2. And the case file will be J3. Somewhere in that line, okay? You could also have other joint exhibits. Say you have photographs, pictures in there that were colored photos, looked real good. By the time it gets to arbitration, they're black and white, blurry. You can't see them. So the advocates will probably get together before the hearing and they'll say, hey, I've got clear pictures. Do you mind if I get copies and bring those as a joint exhibit? No, that's fine, because I want the arbitrator to see them as well. And so the arbitrator will say, all right, we got the national agreement J1. We'll make the JCAM J2, and we'll have the joint exhibit. The case file is J3. Do the parties have any other joint exhibits from me? Yes, sir, we do. We've got these photographs. They're on pages 16 through 24. And you can't see them in the case file. These are color photos, so we're going to include these as a joint exhibit. And the arbitrator will say, okay, this is going to be J4, Joint Exhibit 4. Anytime you're looking at an arbitration decision and you see M1, M2, that's management's exhibit. U1, that's union's exhibit. All right, so you got a J3. That's Joint Exhibit 3. Just a little something for you. That's free. The union submitted formal A contentions incorporating the informal A statement of Mr. Eisenhart, beautiful, Exhibit J3, which 15, management did not submit contingents or any evidence at formal Step A. This grievance was then appealed to Step B. Mr. Eisenhart's testimony was regular practice for letter carriers, including himself, to scan parcels in the office while someone is out on vacation hold or forward in, and there was no correction by management on a daily basis for any time before Postmaster Smith addressed him in August 2024. It's got some words in there that didn't need to be in there, but that's all right. He testified that 80% to 100% of the time he scanned items in the office when he returned at the end of the day. Postmaster Smith's instructions that he should not scan parcels in the office at the end of the day constituted a change in policy and thus working conditions of employment. Neither Postmaster Smith nor Supervisor Jorge testified at the hearing. Discussions and findings. Issue 1. Did management violate Articles 3, 5, and 19 of the National Agreement when they gave the order to not scan parcels in the office once the carriers left the office based on the GPS geofence data? If so, what is the remedy? A. Introduction. This grievance was initiated by Stuart Eisenhart. Now, I'm not repeating myself. This is just her, okay? Out of frustration and confusion regarding the postmaster's instruction. The instruction significantly changed when and where undeliverable packages were scanned, adding a hard and fast rule that they must be scanned at the beginning of the day before the carriers left the office. Further, the instruction required that the packages be scanned within an invisible boundary, the cyber fence. At the hearing, as well as in the DRT record, management offered no explanation or clarification to support the contention that the instruction did not violate the National Agreement. The word contention is in quotes because management did not provide either a written statement of their position or contentions or evidence at either informal Step A or formal Step A. The union argues that their silence is admission of the violation. The union seeks remedies that include withdrawal of the instruction, a cease and desist order prohibiting management from using the GPS as a supervisory tool, and that management adhere to Postal Handbook M39 Section 115. I'll read that again because it's spot on with what has happened to us. It is the perfect example of what has happened to us, and it stems from TREP. When our union president, agreed with management that they could use GPS data to adjust routes, not only to adjust routes with the GPS data, but they could question you, both parties could question you based on GPS data. 22-minute load time, unload time, stationary time. You can now, for the first time in the history of the NALC, be questioned based off of GPS data. If you did not have a reasonable answer, they could deduct your time based off of GPS data. How dangerously stupid is that? And you've got this same individual out marching the streets talking about fight like hell. When it came time for him to fight like hell and continue to do this, when it came time to fight like hell with this, he betrayed the city letter carrier. When it came time to fight like hell in the TA, he betrayed the city letter carrier. When it came time to raise hell, when it came to Brother Gates, he betrayed the city letter carrier. The only thing this motherfucker knows how to do is betray the city letter carrier. I don't give a fuck what you say about anything he's done. I don't give a shit. As a city letter carrier, I have eyeballs. And I can fucking see. I've been doing this too fucking long. Listen to this contention. The union seeks remedies that include withdrawal of the instruction. Very good. A cease and desist order prohibiting management from the use of GPS as a supervisory tool. That is exactly what has happened to us. GPS, the scanner, management is supervising us based on GPS data. I never thought I would see a day when that would happen. And we put up no fight for it. I say take it to national level arbitration. If we lose, we fucking lose. They're doing it anyway. All we can do is win. They can say, well, if we take that, we can lose. They're doing it. They're fucking doing it. And we put up no fucking fight whatsoever. Do you know why? Because the city letter carriers are the ones getting fucked over, not the union. Not those in Washington. It's us, the backbone, light blue. We're the ones down here getting fucked over by GPS. Your president is in agreement with that shit. He put it in a fucking memo that they could use GPS data to track us. I told you my friend Butch Lyle in management. He was in upper management, called me, immediately said, what in the fuck are y'all thinking? What were y'all doing? I said, brother, I have no idea. Even the business agent's office, not the business agent, because he kisses Renfro's ass biblically. But people in the business agent's office call me, and what is up with the memo? I said, those times? Yeah, no, don't know. So how many times y'all heard that? But it pisses me off because, I want a union that's hellraisers, savages, fucking vicious. That's what I want. I want a union like a union's supposed to fucking be. I want a union that carries the fucking hammer. That's what I want. In a union. That's why I love James Henry. He carries a fucking hammer. If you listen to him, all he's ever done is carried the fucking hammer. And that's what I want my union to do. And we don't. And it pisses me off because I'm not a coward. I want to fight at all times. I want to fight. Great remedy there. And that management adhered to Postal Handbook M39 Section 115. B, did management violate Article 5 by basing the instruction on the cyber fence data? Article 5 precludes management from unilaterally changing the letter carrier's working conditions. There is no argument or evidence submitted by management to the contrary. The union relies on the decision of arbitrator Wolitz, wherein she discussed the conditions under which management may conduct surveillance and observation of carriers. Wolitz considered a situation involving surveillance of carriers by supervisors from several blocks away. Thus, the carriers were unaware of surveillance because the supervisors were hidden. Read that again. Wolitz considered a situation involving surveillance of carriers by supervisors from several blocks away. Now, they could be in their car. To me, they can be in their station. They can be in their office. Several blocks away. You're surveilling me is what you're doing. Thus, the carriers were unaware of surveillance because the supervisors were hidden. She cites Wolitz. The language of M39 134.21 and M39 134.22 is very clear. It is also very clear that the language is encompassed by Article 19 because it relates to a working condition, the conditions under which a letter carrier may be surveilled or observed. Surveillance must be conducted in an open and above-the-board manner. The manager is not to spy or use other covert techniques. I'll read this portion again. It is also very clear that the language is encompassed by Article 19 because it relates to a working condition. Why is that important? I've talked about this 8 million times. My business agent bitched out on us on this. When we, JB and I, had a masterful case on management surveilling us covertly, spying on us. We had emails where management acknowledged as much. And because Renfro did not want these going forward because he was in works, this is my opinion. This is what I think. Because they were in works to do this TRAP, to incorporate GPS data, he sabotaged this. My business agent bitched out on it. And what he was trying to sell us on was Arbitrator Nolan's decision about if it doesn't pertain to wages, hours, or working conditions, it's not a grievance. It's not a grievance. If it doesn't affect your wages, if it doesn't affect your hours, or if it doesn't affect your working conditions, it's not a grievance. And I told him that's foolishness. It's foolishness. And he said that labor had told him that we can expect to be watched on the street, supervised on the street. I said, surely you're not being serious with that. He said, it's right there in 134. You can expect to be supervised at all times. I said, it also tells you how they're supposed to do it. They have to accompany me on the street. Do you know what that means? They have to come with me on the street. They cannot spy or use covert techniques. I said, please tell me you're not that stupid. And we had it out. I said, do not withdraw this case. I'm going to win this case. I was the advocate. JB was going to be the formal aide. Do not withdraw this case. And he withdrew the case. Because management punked him out. They punked my business agent out. I believe it was because it was a directive from National. They were not sending that forward because we could not have a decision ruining their implementation of GPS data into the new agreement, into the TRAP memos. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. I've been wrong once before. But anyway, Arbitrator Wolitz shoots down that because management, this was out of California, management came into that hearing and talked about the Nolan decision, and they had guts. They had guts out there, which my business agent does not have. They had guts out there, and they took it forward because it's a stupid, outlandish contention that they can spy on us and use covert techniques because it's not a working condition, a violation of that. And so I said, therefore they can never violate 115.4 of the M39 because cussing me doesn't affect my hours or wages or working conditions. And he had no answer. But anyway, I need to quit doing that. Hell, I'm already an hour into it, and I've still got about 3 more hours. Arbitrator Wolitz acknowledged that management has a procedure and method by which it can conduct covert surveillance of carriers when it has suspicion of wrongdoing. However, neither the suspicion nor the procedure are shown to exist in the evidence before her. As such, management was found to have violated Article 19. The union further relies on Arbitrator Talmadge's decision, in this case there, wherein the management was held to have violated Articles 5, 19, and 41 by using the PET based on 139.99 to establish a demonstrated street time by which carriers were expected to perform daily. This Orchard Park installation, New York case arose out of management's use of the performance engagement tool PET program to set the expected leave and return times for the carriers. The carriers were then required to explain why they did not make those times. Arbitrator Talmadge noted that the union's acknowledgement of management's right and ability to develop and utilize tools, including computer-generated data, reports, and expectations, if it is consistent with the national agreement, further management has the right to evaluate and management the floor with the assistance of such computer-generated data and tools. However, she determined that the way the PET was used during the period defined as the incident date of that grievance violated the national agreement. In upholding the grievance, Arbitrator Talmadge reasoned as follows. The parties have established the method for evaluating city letter carrier routes as defined in Chapter 2 of the M39 and Chapter 9 of the M41, which developed a method of averages for route evaluations. The PET is a management efficiency tool for estimating a carrier's daily workload, which uses an exact number of hours from one distinct day. The PET derives its information from DOAS. Although management has the right to utilize this efficiency tool to assist in its assessment of the carrier's workload and auxiliary assistance request, as noted in a number of Step 4 settlements, the PET cannot be the sole basis for disapproving auxiliary assistance or approving more time than requested. Both Arbitrator Talmadge and Wolitz found that the manner of supervision, including covert surveillance, hiding in the bushes, and computer-generated data, affected the working conditions and are thus covered by Article 5. Therefore, management must follow the requirements set forth by the National Agreement regarding surveillance. It must be out in the open. Further, they must follow the requirements of Article 5 when changing the carrier's working conditions. In this case, they gave an instruction based solely on computer-generated data. To stack insult to injury, that data was based on invisible, thus hidden barriers established by the cyber fence and GPS data. I'll read that again. Therefore, management must follow the requirements set forth by the National Agreement regarding surveillance. It must be out in the open. It must be out in the open. Oh, shit. Further, they must follow the requirements of Article 5 when changing the carrier's working conditions. In this case, they gave an instruction based solely on computer-generated data. To stack insult to injury, the data was based on invisible, thus hidden, barriers established by the cyber fence and GPS data. She's mocking management right there. But your president is in full agreement to use this hidden, invisible shit to adjust our routes. The evidence and arguments in the DRT record failed to identify any rule or regulation requiring the carriers to scan parcels within the confines of the cyber fence. The rules and regulations regarding use of the scanners identified in M39 232.2 entitled Non-Delivery Events indicate that when an item cannot be delivered for any reason, it is to be scanned for data collection and for notification of the customer. There is no specific place where this scan must occur. Further, rules and procedures for delivery of parcels refers to M39, Section 23. Although there was testimony regarding street time versus office time, and that the correlating codes, there is no evidence or testimony indicating that parcels must be scanned at one time of the day or another. The only evidence we have in this case relates to Mr. Eisenhardt's observation and personal practice of scanning 80% to 100% undeliverable parcels at the end of the day in the office and not at the beginning of the day. The fact that Mr. Eisenhardt was confused by the instruction that he testified there was no notice to the NELC at the national level or at the local level to change where non-deliverable parcels were to be scanned or to make a firm policy that they were only to be scanned at the beginning of the day in the office was a change from the practice. Thus, it was a unilateral change affecting the working conditions. And here's another gripe I have. I need to hurry up. You heard on prior episodes where Barner and Lloyd were given DRT instructions to remand cases that did not have management's contentions. Remand those cases so that those cases can be fully developed. I will not do that. I will not do that. I will not harm my formal Step A process by having a formal Step A representative for the union put in a request to meet. Management failed to honor that request, and then we give them a second bite at the apple. That will never happen. What we will do is educate our formal Step A's to write a very detailed statement, give me the supporting documentation, send that up to the DRT, and that DRT member better state that management's position is null and void at the DRT because the documentation contained in the union's formal Step A contention shows that there was a request to meet. Management failed to meet. And so we sent the case forward to the DRT. We will not be remanding it back. And have your business agents fight out with area labor on that. I'm not giving management a second bite at the elbow because they're too fucking lazy to do their job. You got formal Step A's out there that are pieces of shit for management. Straight pieces of shit. And they have they could care less about the union. Piss on the union, piss on the city letter carrier. You're not going to take time out of my day to have to meet with you, sorry bastards. That's their position. We're not going to entertain that any longer. Once that case is sent to the DRT, it will not be remanded. As long as my formal Step A's are doing their job. And send that supporting documentation forward. This is why. A fantastic position put on by Mr. Eisenhardt. The advocate, a fantastic job. C. Does management's silence at formal Step A constitute concession? This is why. Article 5 of the National Agreement does not preclude all unilateral changes. However, management is silent on the basis of their decision, the subject of their decision, prior notice of the change, or any other factors required for evaluation of violation under Article 3 and 5. The union argues that such silence must be held as a concession to the charges. Why is that important? Because here's what's going to happen. You're going to send it up to the DRT. They've got our full position now at the DRT. They're going to remand that back to the Formal A. Do you know who else is going to get a copy of that? labor. Labor is going to get an underhanded copy of that so they can now help the formal step A write a position, because they're going to say that the union and management will meet no later than 7 days after this remand. They will meet within 7 days. Do you know what management's going to do within those 7 days? Labor is going to have this case file now. They've got our full position. They're going to get with the formal step A and say, here's your position. Here's your contention. That's what's going to happen. Because they're underhanded, lying, thieving, cheating, sorry-ass bastards. That's why. We've got to quit playing into their hands in this grievance procedure. They have hijacked this thing on us. We've got to take it back. And that's step one. Quit remanding shit back, because you're remanding it back to their formal A and labor as well. Don't be so stupid to think that that's not happening. Here's what she says. Article 5 of the National Agreement does not preclude all unilateral changes. However, management is silent on the basis of the decision, the subject of their decision, prior notice of the change, or any other factors required for evaluation of violations under Articles 3 and 5. The union argues that such silence must be held as a concession to the charges. Article 15 requires that the parties set forth their contentions and exchange evidence at formal step A or be barred from presenting new argument or evidence later. This is a long-established rule, negotiated by the parties and reiterated in the JCAM. However, the preclusion of evidence absent at formal step A is not absolute. The parties can supplement the record. The step B team can ensure that the record has been fully developed before submission to arbitration. The Step B team may remand the case. Likewise, there are circumstances where additional evidence may be accepted by the arbitrator. However, where one party remains silent on both contentions and evidence in informal Step A and formal Step A, and the Step B team neither supplements the record nor remands the case, an arbitrator is hard-pressed to consider anything offered by management. And the reason I don't care about them saying that about the DRT, we have plenty of arbitrators' decisions talking about new argument at B. They will not consider that. Most arbitrators will not consider new argument at B. They're just not going to. We've got numerous decisions talking about that. The union argues that management's silence as concession to all grievances raised. In support of that position, the union relies on arbitrators Jacobs' decision, case number there, as well as El Corey and El Corey 8th edition, chapter 8, 4I4, for the premise that a party's failure to present evidence or a witness failure to testify should be afforded a negative inference. The failure of a party to call as a witness a person who is available to it and who should be in a position to contribute informed testimony may permit the arbitrator to infer that had the witness been called, the testimony adduced would have been adverse to the position of that party. Where an employer failed to have a single accusing witness appear, however, the arbitrator expressed concern because of the accuser's absence and found insufficient evidence to support the employee's discharge. El Corey and El Corey, 8th edition, chapter 8.4i, page 382. Arbitrator Aaron, in his national panel case, stated as follows: I am fully in agreement with Arbitrator Mittenthal that the provision of Article 15 requiring that all the facts and arguments relied upon by both parties must be fully disclosed before the case is submitted to arbitration should be strictly enforced. In this case, therefore, I have given no consideration to any of the arguments advanced by the Postal Service. See Exhibit J3, page 7. Arbitrator Mittenthal stated in his decision regarding new evidence and argument, the difficulty here is the lateness of this argument. Article 15 describes in great detail what is expected of the parties in the grievance procedure. The Postal Service's Step 2 decision must make a full statement if it's understanding the contractual provisions involved. Its Step 3 decision must include a statement of any additional contentions not previously set forth. Its Step 4 decision must contain an adequate explanation of the reasons therefor. In the present case, the silence of management is a violation of Articles 15 requirement to fully set forth contentions and exchange supporting evidence prior to mediation. This arbitrator can give no consideration to the arguments advanced by management. The grievance is sustained. Now, the only exception to that, an adverse, if they say that they want there to be some kind of adverse effect, is if, and has had this happen, this negative inference. I've had this happen several times where management wants to call a grievant that's been disciplined. And I refuse to put the grievant on the stand. They're going to say, well, we're going to call the grievant and put him on as our witness. I object to that because I cannot be compelled to testify against myself. And that's law. And if you look that up, take that in there with you. If you're an advocate and you're like, management has a shit case, I'm not putting them, they did a terrible investigation. I'm not going to give them a second bite of the apple by going at my grievant, the aggrieved, and putting them on the stand because it's just opening them up for the advocate to go after them further. And so they have failed in meeting just cause. I've got a great formal step A, a great informal step A. I'm not going to call the grievant. And so management will say that's a negative inference because they didn't testify. Our argument is what? They cannot be compelled to testify against themselves. This burden is management and management's alone. He is not in here to prove his innocence. They must prove his guilt. And so that is one of the only cases where a negative inference cannot be attained, is when the grievant, I say, I'm not going to put them on. They're not going to call them as a witness because they'll be like, we're going to call them. You're not going to call them as a witness either. They cannot be compelled to testify against themselves. And so there's another little something for you. It's just all education today, baby. It's all education. D, what is the remedy? The union requests remedies including 1, a cease and desist order, and 2, an order that the management rescind their instruction. The most basic considerations for remedy in arbitration may be considered for 2 viewpoints. Whether the arbitrator has the power to award a specific remedy, and 2, whether assuming that the arbitrator has the power, the remedy is warranted in the particular case, El Corey and El Corey, 8th edition, chapter 8, page 1174. While the arbitrator has the power to award appropriate remedies to fit the specific situation under the Steelworkers Trilogy, the remedy must address the harm caused. As arbitrator Menthal stated in the case there, the purpose of a remedy is to place employees and management in the position they would have been, and the remedy should serve to restore the status quo ante. And we've gone over that numerous times. As the term remedy implies, it should serve to correct the problem. While the arbitrator has the power to award appropriate remedies to fit the specific situation under United Steelworkers Trilogy, the remedy must be specific enough to address the harm caused. The harm caused is the uncertainty of the instruction, the change in working conditions of the carriers, the use of computer data as the sole determining factor in discipline, the fact that no discipline has been issued. Carriers, including Mr. Eisenhart, were questioned by management about why he scanned an item on the cyber fence GPS data. This may ultimately create a hostile working environment, as was suggested by arbitrator Talmadge in her decision discussed herein. And that's where having some gumption, having some courage pays off. My business agent has no courage. He would say what? And we talked about this before. Well, wait until some discipline's issued. They can surveil you. They can use covert techniques on you. Wait till some discipline's issued. What about the hostile working environment that it's created? What about that? Management will rarely discipline us. They've just now started getting the you-know-whats to start disciplining us now, because we have not been fighting back this scanning stuff that they're doing now. All these things that they're doing now with the scanner. It's because we've put up no fight. So they're coming after us. My business agent, well, they can do it. Let's just wait until discipline and then we'll remove the discipline. Well, a lot of times, about 99% of the time, they're not disciplining. They're just beating the shit out of us with it. They've created a hostile working environment because of it. And our position is, well, let's just wait for discipline. Here's you some gumption from this business agent to send this case forward, to make this argument. The harm is caused is the uncertainty of the instruction, the change in working conditions of the carriers, the use of computer data as the sole determining factor in discipline. The fact that no discipline has been issued, listen to me, my business agent in Region 8, the fact that no discipline has been issued, carriers, including Mr. Eisenhart, were questioned by management about why he scanned an item on the cyber fence GPS data. This may ultimately create a hostile working environment, as was suggested by arbitrator Talmadge in her decision discussed herein. That's why you go forward. You can't lose. They're already doing it. You can't lose. Here's a 100% win. Why? Because you got guts from a branch president, Mr. Grosskopf. You got guts from a shop steward, Mr. Eisenhardt. You got guts from an advocate, Mr. Harrison. You got guts from a business agent saying, let's attack it. They're doing it anyway. Attack it. The grievance is sustained. Management shall immediately rescind the instruction regarding scanning undeliverable items based on the cyber fence invisible barrier. Future instructions regarding the cyber fence must comply with the national agreement, specifically Articles 3 and 5 regarding changes of working conditions. Management shall comply with the M39 regarding surveillance of carriers and all substantive and procedural requirements of Article 15 regarding investigating and issuing discipline based on any way upon GPS data. Management shall cease and desist from using GPS data alone and as the sole basis for discipline. So there's an absolutely fantastic decision. Now, if y'all want that decision, email David Grosskopf and get him to send it to you. Email David Grosskopf and he'll send you a copy anywhere around the world. If you want that decision, email David Grosskopf, Branch 3, and he'll send that to you. And he'll be thankful to me. He will call me tomorrow and cuss me out. He'll say, this is what he'll say, you motherfucker, you. That's how it started off. So, but beautiful decision up there, my man. Fantastic decision. SPM scans. SPM scans, they're rampant. What we're trying to do on SPM scans is showing the deficiency of the scanner. The problem we have is that your president has talked about the scanners are the greatest thing since sliced bread. If y'all remember the questions and answers we had, where carriers are saying, hey, it's showing that my package when I'm at the door is 400 feet away. Oh, well, that's not pertaining to this. The scanner, it's flawless. And he's building management's case for them about the scanner. He has a problem with that, right? And the TA is building management's case for them about we're broke. We have no money. And he was saying, hey, they're broke. They have no money. And what else y'all need me to tell them? Well, just tell them this is the best you could do. That's the best I could do. Just tell them that you can't, you squoze everything out of them I could. I squoze everything out of them I could. He's a parrot. But anyway, what we're trying to do on these, to defeat these disciplines, is show that there's problems with the GPS, with the scanner, right? I talked about this in my last episode on Wednesday. Any doubts raised, we're trying to raise doubts about the scanner, about the data, okay? Any doubts raised, if you're going into arbitration, any doubts raised must go in the favor of the accused, us. Any doubts raised, they do not go in favor of the accuser, management. That's common practice. If you look it up, advocates, look up, Google, doubts raised must go in favor of the accused. You're going to see a plethora of things come up to support that contention. Law. Any law will tell you doubts raised must go in favor of the accused. So what we're trying to do with these SPM scans, doubts raised must go in favor of the accused, right? So we have some screenshots that people have sent me, and something saying they told us the same thing as staying up. Talk to go back and scan also. They said if there's nothing in the box, we're supposed to take a picture of the empty box. So the instruction by management today is go back and scan. Do not state that you've passed it any longer. Here's another came out on the scanner. Attention everyone, from now on, if you get a sampling request and you've already passed the location, you must go back to the location and complete the sampling request. Thank you all and be safe. So that's going on everywhere. Everywhere. If you've passed it and it comes up to go scan it, go back and scan. Now what do you do? What do you do? Do you go back and scan it? Do you follow that instruction? Or do you say, hey, that instruction is falsifying a scan because I'm actually past the delivery point. If I'm past the delivery point and it has an option to scan past the delivery point, do I do what's right or do I go back and falsify the scan? Because that's what you're doing. If you're going back if you're saying that you've already passed it, and you have legitimately already passed it, and it's telling you to go back 2 houses to scan the mail in the box, basically that's telling you to falsify the scan. Why? Because I have a prompt. I've already passed it. That's my prompt. You want me to go back? I've already passed it. So you want me to falsify that scan. That's what they're doing. Now, y'all may think that that's trivial. I don't care. It's falsifying a scan. So if I say, hey, I've already passed it, I don't care. I don't want you to say that anymore. So you want me to falsify the scan. I don't care about management's programs. I don't care about that shit, the data, whatever they're trying to collect. I don't care. I don't care. I care about one thing and one thing only. The city letter carrier, light blue. That's all I care about. You're going to discipline me? How are we going to beat that discipline? We're going to show that those scanners are faulty. I've got 2 things here. Internal service performance measurement. On street, first mile sampling process. It's internal service performance measurement, on street, first mile sampling process. And it's got some questions and answers. This is management's thing. It's questions and answers. Receiving sampling requests and all these different things. If you go to number 16 on this, if you go to number 16, why might a carrier not receive a programmed sampling request? The following situations could prevent a carrier from receiving sampling requests. Geolocation of address. If the latitude, longitude recorded in the system is not centered on the delivery point, the MDD may not trigger. Doubts raised must go in favor of the accused. Doubts raised must go in favor of the accused, right? Geolocation of address, I'll read it again. If the latitude, longitude recorded in the system is not centered on the delivery point, the MDD may not trigger. Is that a possibility? It's a possibility. It says it may not trigger. That's all I need. MDD route ID. The carrier must enter the correct and current route ID into the MDD. The MDD only receives delivery sampling requests for the entered route ID. MDD software version. MDDs need the latest software update to receiving sampling requests. This update is pushed to the MDDs when they are cradled each evening. Please see question 18 for instructions to check the MDD software version. Question 17. If the MDD has a weak cellular or GPS signal, can the carrier receive sampling request alerts? Can the MDD to transmit the data to RIMS? I'll read that again. If the MDD has a weak cellular or GPS signal, can the carrier receive sampling request alerts? Can the MDD, and they missed a word, to transmit the data to RIMS? If the MDD has a weak cellular signal, the MDD may not be able to transmit data to RIMS. However, this should not prevent the carrier from receiving sampling request alerts. Listen to me. If the MDD has a weak GPS signal, the carrier may not be able to receive sampling request alerts. If the MDD has a weak GPS signal, the carrier may not be able to receive sampling request alerts. Doubts raised must go in favor of the accused. Have I raised enough doubt right here? The possibility is I didn't get that sampling request. You're giving me discipline based on GPS data alone. I can beat that with that memo. However, I'm raising doubts right here. I'm going to raise doubts right here. Question 36. What should the carrier do if the alert does not trigger until after the carrier delivers the mail? Listen to me. What should the carrier do if the alert does not trigger until after the carrier delivers the mail? The carrier should not backtrack or pull the mail out of the box for sampling. This could result in scanning mail delivered on a previous day, which would provide incorrect data for the delivery measurement. If an alert does not trigger until after the carrier has delivered the mail, the carrier should. So what does that tell you? That there's a possibility they have made a game plan for if it triggers afterwards. You know why? Because there's a possibility that it could trigger afterwards. They cannot say it never triggers afterwards. Management cannot say that. They cannot tell you an investigative interview. It never triggers after it. You're just not doing it. If an alert does not trigger until after, we've come up with a game plan to when that happens. You know why? Because it happens. The carrier has delivered the mail. The carrier should, 1, from the work order screen, initiate the work order by pressing enter. Now, how many of y'all been taught to do that? How many of y'all been educated, instructed to do that? From the work order screen, initiate the work order by pressing enter. On the sampling screen, press enter. When prompted that the sample is not completed, select 3, already passed address to close the order. So it's telling you to do that. It's telling you to press already passed address. Note, the already passed address option is not available for collection sampling requests. Now, just like that arbitration I had where they removed that lady, saying that she was putting her vehicle in reverse and backing. It says, it was in all caps, absolutely no backing in the investigative interview. Are you aware of the policy of, in all caps, absolutely no backing? And so I start questioning management and the arbitrator, Arbitrator Miles. He stops me, he says, does that vehicle have an R on the gear shift? Yeah. What is the R for? Reverse. Well, why does it have a reverse on there if it's in all caps, absolutely no backing? Why would it have an R on there? Same premise. Why would it have a selection 3 already passed address if that wasn't a possibility? Already passed address. The already passed address option. Why does it have an option? Because it happens. And you're giving me instruction to falsify a scan. 37. Why does the MDD sometimes alert after the carrier delivers the mail? For a delivery, sampling request trigger when the MDD is within a certain radius of the sampling location. If the delivery location coordinates recorded in the system do not quite match the physical delivery address coordinates, the MDD may trigger at a nearby location instead of triggering at the specific delivery address. Doubts raised must go in favor of the accused. I'm going to read this again. For the delivery, sampling request trigger when the MDD, not when management's computer. Not management's computer, the MDD, that's what I have on my person, that's what I'm holding, is the MDD device, is within a certain radius of the sampling location. If the delivery location coordinates recorded in the system do not quite match the physical delivery address coordinates, the MDD may trigger at a nearby location instead of triggering at the specific delivery address. 38. What should the carrier do if the work order triggered but the carrier forgot to do the sampling? If a work order alerted but the carrier forgot to sample the mail when making the delivery, the carrier should not backtrack or pull the mail out of the box for sampling. This could result in scanning mail delivered on a previous day, which would provide incorrect data for the delivery measurement. The carrier should not process the work order. The following day, all unprocessed work orders are cleared and the MDD reset. Now that is internal service performance measurement on-street first mile sampling process. Get that and put it in your contentions. Get that and put it in your contentions if you have any discipline. Here's something else. This is the OIG report on SPM. You're going to need this. It's an audit report from June 26 of 2024. Now, what's so funny about this is that the OIG and the Postal Service are in disagreement with their findings. It's funny. If you read the whole thing, I know it's boring. It's a bunch of pages. I'm not going to read all of them. But they're constantly in disagreement. The Postal Inspectors, the OIG says, this is our findings, and the Postal Service says, we don't agree with them. And who is it in the middle? Us. We're the ones getting disciplined on something that the Postal Service and the OIG can't agree on. But it's so absolute. It's so precise that we're going to get disciplined for it. Do you think that we've proved our position already just by what I read? We're trying to raise doubts on the scanner, regardless of what your dumbass president has done. On page 7 of this, and this is accuracy of reported service performance audit report. Accuracy of reported service performance audit report. Page 7. Limitations in technology. The scanners used to notify carriers when to complete sample requests and to capture scans rely on cell phone or GPS signal. When there is an area without cell service, the scanners will not work, or the request for sampling may not be sent until after the carrier has already delivered for that address. These are the words that we're looking for now when we're trying to defend stuff. May not. That's doubts raised. Those two words are doubts raised. The scanners will not work, or the request for sampling may not be sent until after the carrier has already delivered for that address. This results in sample requests not being completed and included in SPM. Carrier compliance with delivery scanning. Carriers do not always complete requested sampling for delivery scans. While the Postal Service met its target for completing 80% of sampling requests sent to carriers, we found that some sampling classifications were not included when calculating whether it met this target. For example, if carriers do not complete a sampling request, they must enter a reason into the scanning device why the scan was not completed when the carrier enters past address, no trigger, other, and denied. The Postal Service excludes these missed scans when determining if met its target. For completing sampling requests, when carriers routinely mark sampling requests as past address or no trigger, other, and denied, it can limit the representativeness of delivery data collected. Now let me ask you something. Do we have something nationally where we can show that management is not delivering 0.10% of the mail that we have? We're leaving mail. We're giving instructions to deliver or to bring back entire routes or to leave entire routes on the floor. So how important is this really if you have entire stations leaving routes on the floor? Or if you have MPOs coming in saying, hey, deny all the 3996s and all the mail that's not delivered, leave it on the floor. How important is this really if we're not delivering a portion of the mail that we have available to us? We're trying to say to the customer, look, this is how long it's taken from when you put it in the outgoing mail to when it hits the deliver point. This is the metric we're trying to use. We're not delivering however much percentage of the mail that we have available to us. I'd put that in there. We don't do that, but I would do that. I would have somebody, director of education or somebody, have every station report how much undeliverable mail. I would request the undeliverable mail report, and then I would put that against what they're delivering and see if we can get them falsifying that. I guarantee you, upper management has no idea that these routes are not being delivered. And so I'm going to be the biggest snitch you've ever seen when I'm executive vice president. I'm going to snitch on everybody in management. If they're not delivering mail, I'm going to request the undeliverable mail report, and then I'm going to put that against what they've left. And if they're falsifying that, we're going to go after that ass too. But you're not going to keep coming after us for this bullshit, and you have managers not even delivering the mail. Anyway, so where was I? The most common reason carriers entered for not completing a sampling request was past address, which they select when they receive an alert from their scanner with a request to scan selected pieces, but the carrier is already beyond the delivery point. They're acknowledging that we are past the delivery point. This has occurred in over 20% of the requested delivery samples. So now what is management doing? They're saying we're going to discipline you, city letter carrier, if you put in now what 20% of the country has been putting in, past address. So if you're past the address, we don't want you going back according to their SOP. Don't go back and hit it. It could be a problem with the scanner, with the MDD device, because I've already shown you all these issues that we're having with it. There could be a problem with that, but if you don't go back, if you never got it, but you don't go back, you're supposed to know anyway we're going to discipline you. Do you see how stupid that sounds? How completely idiotic that is? They're telling you, which they selected when they receive an alert from their scanner with a request to scan selected pieces, but the carrier is already beyond the delivery point. They didn't say we were falsifying it. They acknowledged the carrier is already beyond the delivery point. This occurred in over 20% of the requested delivery samples. And then it has these totals. Carrier completed all scans, scanner alerted, work order initiated, and carrier scanned fewer pieces than requested. Carrier did not scan, but pieces were expected. Scanner alerted, work order initiated, and carrier completed work order by indicating there was no pieces to scan. Scanner alerted and carrier did not complete work order. Bunch of that stuff, and it tells you how many pieces, how many scans. While there are times when it is valid for carriers to not complete sampling requests, we found routes with significantly elevated amounts of sampling requests not completed. Specifically, we found 24,544, or 10% of all routes entered past address, denied, or ignored for more than 50% of the sample requests received. There is no way to determine if the issues with scanning were caused by carrier noncompliance or limitations with the scanner. I'll read that again. Because doubts raised, what do we say? Doubts raised must go in favor of the accused. Here's the federal investigators, the investigative arm of the Postal Service. There is no way to determine if the issues with scanning were caused by carrier noncompliance or limitations with the scanner. Yet I'm going to receive discipline in my way to being removed by something that the OIG has just stated. There is no way to determine if it's my noncompliance or limitations with the scanner. This is as dangerous a discipline as we will ever receive, because we cannot prove innocence. Because I'm going to say that I never got it. Management's going to say, hey, my computer showed that you did. The MDD is shown to be problematic at best. The OIG says there's no way to determine if the issues with scanning were caused by carrier noncompliance or limitations with the scanner. And I have management issuing my carriers discipline based on that. How dangerous is that? GPS data alone cannot be the sole determinant for discipline. Right? Let's get these case files ready, man. This is a battle. Surely National will come out with something. It's not going to be us, the carriers, educating the carriers on this. Surely. We have National coming out to do something other than sticking their head up their own fucking ass about this stuff. Why is it always the city letter carrier that's got to educate the fucking city letter carrier? Fuck, man, they're removing us. They're disciplining us for shit they can't prove, and the OIG's telling you. And where's my fucking union at? Hell, half of them got their fucking job stripped from them, and you got dipshit up at the top not doing a fucking thing. Anyway, I'll read that again. There is no way to determine if the issues with scanning were caused by carrier noncompliance or limitations with the scanner. However, by excluding these scan classifications and not evaluating if carriers are complying with delivery scanning policies, there is an increased risk routes are not being represented equally in the data. Carriers scanning more pieces of mail than requested. We found over 1 million sampling events, or about 2% of the total, where the number of pieces scanned was greater than the number requested. Management stated that they have implemented a system to limit the scans to only allow 4 more than the requested number of scans. However, nearly 100,000 sampling events included carriers over-scanning by 4 or more pieces. See Figure 3. Indicating that the system the Postal Service developed to prevent carriers from over-scanning is not working properly. I'll read that again. Indicating that the system the Postal Service developed to prevent carriers from over-scanning is not working properly. Doubts raised must go in favor of the accused. They're telling you, the OIG is telling you, that a portion of the Postal Service system that they developed is not working properly. Overscanning is both a waste of resources and can be a potential source of bias in the SPM system. Scanning fewer pieces of mail than requested. Inversely, we identified 46,481, or 0.008% of 5.7 million partially completed scans where Postal Service employees were expected to scan at least 20 or more mail pieces than they did. For example, we identified a sample request where a carrier scanned only 2 pieces when the sampling request expected 45. While the number of pieces expected is only an estimate of the number of mail pieces that will arrive that day, the extreme disparity between the number of pieces expected and the number of pieces scanned in these instances indicates that either employees are not scanning all pieces or there is an error in the calculations of pieces expected. The SPM system requires a certain number of samples be conducted nationwide each quarter. If postal employees do not complete the samples as requested, the system will continue to request the samples from other employees until enough samples have been completed. This results in missing performance data on certain routes. Additionally, when employees over or underscan, it can impact the overall representativeness and reliability of the data by artificially increasing or decreasing the data for those routes. Therefore, carrier non-compliance with requested sampling can cause the data to not be equally weighted and representative of the population. OIG evaluation, it says the Postal Service's response and evaluation, and the entire thing is management disagreeing with the OIG. It's funny if you read it, because the OIG has done their investigation and the Postal Service says, well, we don't agree with that. We agree with these things, we don't agree with that. So that's something good that you can put in your case file. Holy shit, an hour and 45 minutes. I'm going to go over this Deems stuff, though. It's going to be 3 damn hours, but Deems is hitting us hard. And one thing that chaps my ass is when you get online and people, they talk about Deems, and they start saying, there's no such thing as Deems desirable. People like, management told me they had me on Deems. People say there is no such thing as Deems. You're hurting people by saying that. Arbitrators acknowledge the Deems desirable. Postal Service acknowledge Deems desirable. We must acknowledge a Deems desirable. We have got to grieve a Deems desirable. JB, if you go to from8arbitration.com, episode 41, JB does a fantastic job on Deems desirable. If people are online saying no such things as Deems, yes, there is. I have gone to arbitration on Deems desirable, and I'll read that decision. Okay, I've got 2 decisions and 2 pieces of paper I'm going to read, and I hate reading, but I'm going to read because these are things that are coming up on social media, and this is how we're going to do things on Sundays. This is Monday, but on Sundays From 8 Arbitration on the Salted Peanuts, I'm going to address what I see online real time. What's happening now? I'm going to address it. This Deems desirable. I'm going to read just a few things that I got this week. Subject, Deems desirable. This was put on the time clock. Dear employee, for the protection and best interest of the United States Postal Service, you are being placed on Deems desirable status for the period of 8/28/2025 through 9/5/2025. This determination has been made based on the holiday schedule and needs of the unit. I'm going to read that again. Subject, Deems desirable status. Now, if you say to an employee on social media, no such thing as Deems, and so they don't address it because they're thinking there's no such things as Deems, you're setting them up for failure. You're setting them up for failure. Subject, Deems desirable status. If there's no such things as Deems, why am I reading this? Deems desirable status. Dear employee, for the protection and best interest of the United States Postal Service, you are being placed on Deems desirable status for the period of 8/28 through 9/5. This determination has been made based on the holiday schedule and needs of the unit. This simply means, should an unanticipated emergency occur that prevents you from reporting as scheduled for any days during the above period, you are reminded that you are to call the ERM system or notify management prior to your scheduled begin tour. You will be required to provide administratively acceptable documentation to substantiate your absence upon returning to work. Failure to do so may lead to your leave not being approved and carried as absent without leave and or corrective action. Okay, so they're telling you could have corrective action against you. Here's another one. I just called in sick and I've never seen this before. Do I need to call my union because last time I saw it to be put in Deems list, I need, and then cut it off, but they call it, it says documentation required. Acceptable documentation is required because your supervisor deems it desirable. Here's another one. This letter serves as notification that you have been placed in a Deems desirable status. Should you call in from August 21st through September 3rd, you'll be required to submit acceptable documentation for your absence. It says ELM states in part 665.41, 513.361, 513.362, and the ELM further states 513.364. So you have numerous things coming out about deems desirable. So is there a deems desirable? Yes. Even on the 3971 was it stated in the little caption there, deems desired, right? So now that we've established there is a deems desirable, go to episode 41. JB does a fantastic job on deems desirable. It's better than anything else you will find because the reports that you ask for will fuck management up. Okay? Now, you're going to need M1597. M1597. Okay? Says this is in further reference to our conversation regarding your December 1 correspondence concerning supervisor activation of the deemed desirable option in ERMS. Let me read that again. For those who say there's no such things as deemed desirable, this is in further reference to our conversation regarding your December 1 correspondence concerning supervisory activation of the deems desirable option in ERMS and the restricted sick leave list provisions of ELM section 513.39. As noted in our June 20th response to a previous NELC inquiry that included this issue, a supervisor's determination that medical documentation or other acceptable evidence of incapacitation is desirable for the protection of the interests of the Postal Service must be made on a case-by-case basis, must be consistent with the provisions of the ELM 513.361, and may not be arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable. So anytime they put something up on the time clock, grouping groups of employees, that's arbitrary or capricious or unreasonable, and it's not on a case-by-case basis. If you've not been told that you're on a deems desirable and you call in and it says deems desirable, that's arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable. You didn't forewarn me. You didn't make me aware. Availability of this ERMS option does not expand or diminish supervisor authority or change policy concerning medical documentation in any way. We are developing an ERMS enhancement to ensure system users are advised of this. That's M1597. Now it talks about ELM 513.361. ELM 513.361, 3 days or less. For a period of absence of 3 days or less, supervisors may accept the employee's statement explaining the absence. Medical documentation or other acceptable evidence of incapacity for work or need to care for a family member is required only when the employee is on restricted sick leave or when the supervisor deems documentation desirable for the protection of the interests of the Postal Service, and that's where they're going with deems desirable. When the supervisor deems documentation desirable for the protection of the interests of the Postal Service, and that is their burden. The protection of the interests of the Postal Service is their burden. Substantiation of the family relationship must be provided if requested. Now, I've got two decisions that I'm going to read. I told you this episode is going to be long. But we're dealing with deems. Again, episode 41. Episode 41 from 8arbitration.com. JB does a fantastic episode on that. This is from Glenda August. Both of these are from Glenda August. This one is from November 6, 2018, C33650. C33650. The grievances sustained, management violated the national agreement when they failed to comply with prior DRT decisions. Management shall cease and desist, failing to comply with DRT resolutions for the Toledo installation. And for us was Andy Atkinson. And so, issue, did the Postal Service violate the national agreement, including but not limited to Articles 3, 15, and 19, when it failed to comply with past decisions and placed the agreement on the deems desirable list? Again, if you're telling people there's no such things as deems desirable, you are hurting that person. There is deems desirable list. Arbitrators will acknowledge that. It's got relevant contract provisions, handbooks and manuals, facts. Management formally notified the agreement in a letter dated January 10th that he was being placed on the deems desirable list effective immediately. The letter stated that the agreement would be required to submit acceptable documentation for any unscheduled absence or tardy. On January 19th, the grievant notified management that he needed to leave work prior to the end of the shift and then called in sick the following day. The union filed the instant grievance contending that the service violated the national agreement and prior DRT decisions for the Toledo installation when they improperly placed the grievant on the deemed desirable list on January 10th. Again, there is a such thing as deemed desirable. There is such a thing. Educate yourselves. Union contentions. The union contended that the instant case is a contractual case and the union is seeking a remedy for the contractual violation. According to the union, the service has violated at least one or more citable precedent-setting grievance resolutions. They noted that this case centers on the grievant being placed on the deemed desirable list effective January 10, 2018 until March 31st, Joint Exhibit 2. The union argued that this was not done in conjunction with an absence or at the time of a call-in. It was a blanket covering all future unscheduled absences for a long period of time. Remember those things that I read? Blocks of time on those things from this date to this date? The union asserted that the grievance is about non-compliance. They contended that the issue of how deemed desirable is to be used and its purpose has already been settled by prior agreements between the parties. It was argued by the union that the parties jointly agreed on the DRT grievance resolutions for case number there as to the difference between deemed desirable and restricted sick leave. And most time, management will do deemed desirable, trying to kind of basically circumvent restricted sick leave. Now, that's what they're using deemed desirable for. They don't want to go through the procedure of restricted sick leave. There's too much to it. So the lazy way to do it is deemed desirable. I'm just going to put the whole station on deemed desirable over the holiday. And so that way it's kind of a scare tactic to keep people from calling in. The union further argued that the DRD decision in that case states that management shall no longer use the deemed desirable option in ERMS as a blanket policy. And that's generally how you're going to have it. They'll put the entire station on deems over holidays. That's generally where you're going to have it. It was the position of the union that the DRT decision in the aforementioned case provided an overview for the use of restricted sick leave versus deemed desirable. According to the union, ELM section 51339 details the restricted sick leave process, which is based on a review of the employee's attendance record and then placed on the restricted list for a quarter. If the employee's attendance record is substantially correct, he/she will be removed after the quarter. However, according to the union, deemed desirable is used for one single current absence of 3 days or less where the service needs documentation to protect their interest. Supervisors must have reasonable fact-based belief that leave is not being taken because the employee is sick. It is to be used for one absence, not for a week, month, or quarter. That's critical because that's what's happening when those things that I just read to you. The union noted that the DRT explained that the case file provides that management has improperly placed carriers on deemed desirable. The union contended that the exact thing occurred in the instant case. The union asserted that the DRT decision was not complied with. In that case, the union argued that management was putting individual employees under the deemed desirable blanket for long periods of time. The union noted that in the DRT decision, the parties provided an explanation regarding the difference between restricted sick leave and deemed desirable that was provided by headquarters manager strategic complement reassignment labor relations, where he provided clarification between the two options. The union argued that local management at Toledo, Ohio disagreed with headquarters management and instead chose to accept their own interpretation regarding the provisions. In support of their position, the union further cited the DRT decision in case number there, in which the DRT decided management violated the national agreement when they placed the agreement on deemed desirable for a period of 30 days after she informed management she was unavailable to work her regular scheduled day off on a holiday schedule. In that same decision, the DRT provided information for educational purposes to management and listed the award for arbitrator Holden, which cited a management exhibit that stated, in order to ensure that the deemed desirable option in ERMS is appropriately utilized by management, the following agreed upon provisions shall apply. The deemed desirable option should not be activated for any extended period of time, but should normally remain active for each specific absence. Now, what do those screenshots say? It's going to be for 7 days, 6 days. What does it say? Options should not be activated for any extended period of time. That's deemed desirable. Activation of the deemed desirable option. Now, this is an arbitrator holding. So when people are on social media saying no such things as deemed desirable, yes, there is. Management uses it against us. We're going to arbitration on these things. Here's an arbitrator. Activation of the deemed desirable option and ERMs should not be made in lieu of placement on the restricted sick leave list. And that's where you're going to get most of them. They're going to have an expended period of time, and they're trying to circumvent restricted sick leave. Deemed desirable does not allow a policy to request documentation for all instances of intermittent leave. Deemed desirable is for specific absences on a case-by-case basis. The above guidelines can be found in guidance and instruction issued by the Postal Service in July 2010, a copy which was introduced as Management Exhibit 1 at the hearing. The union cited yet another DRT decision on the same issue where in case number there, the DRT decided that management had improperly placed the agreement in a deemed desirable status. Management is highly recommended to review the JCAM and the ELM prior to requesting medical certification and placing employees on deemed desirable. The union contended that all the aforementioned DRT decisions are consistent in instructing management of the distinction between deemed desirable and restricted sick leave, and are in line with the Postal Service headquarters position as well as the USPS July 2010 guidance and instruction. However, the union contended the new local management in Toledo is arguing against the USPS headquarters position on the matter. It was the position of the union that deemed desirable has been decided by the parties and is not the issue before the arbitrator. According to the union, the issue is whether or not management comply with these DRT decisions, and they contend the answer is no. The union argued that the DRT decisions cited are binding and precedent setting, yet management ignored the decisions and continued to violate the national agreement. They further argued that management is attempting to make disagreements about the ELM and whether they can place an employee on deemed desirable as a blanket for long periods of time rather than for a single current absence. The union noted again that this is not the issue in the case. Finally, the union contended that the letter of the agreement received from management, Joint Exhibit 2-15, placing him under a blanket instruction to provide acceptable documentation between January 10th and March 31st is clearly a violation of the prior DRT instructions and precedent-setting educational DRT decisions. The union requested that this arbitrator sustain the grievance, find the service in violation of noncompliance with grievance DRT resolutions, and order management to cease and desist failing to comply with the grievance resolutions. Management contentions. Management in the instant case contended that they did not violate the national agreement when they placed the agreement on the deemed desirable list. According to management, the agreement in his extremely short career with the Postal Service has shown that he did not show any care or consideration to come to work on a regular basis. Therefore, his supervisor informed him in writing that he was being placed on deemed desirable. The service disputed the union's claim that management violated past decisions and argued that none of the DRT decisions cited by the union have anything to do with the instant case. Management asserted that the union bears the burden of proof in this contract case. It was management's position that the JCAM at page 1014 provided the requirements for medical certification, and I'm not going to read all that. Management also provided the requirement for sick leave documentation from the ELM section 513.36, which states the requirements for employees who are absent 3 days or less or over 3 days. The service offered the opinion of arbitrator Toby Braverman, in this case out of Buffalo, New York, where she opined the burden of proof to demonstrate that management has been arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable in identifying letter carriers as deemed desirable for purposes of sick leave verification is on the union. That burden was not met where the evidence established that manager made decisions based upon legitimate considerations, and the attendance records of the affected employees appeared to justify the action. One employee for whom the action appears to have been unreasonable was not actually required to submit documentation, and there is therefore no basis for a remedy. Management argued that likewise in the instant case, they did not act arbitrarily, capriciously, or unreasonably in notifying the grievant that he was placed on deems desirable. It was management's position that in the case at bar, the key word is may place the employee, not must or shall place the employee on restricted sick leave list. They argued that there is no mandate in the ELM stating that this must be done, but rather is an option to management as it's notifying an employee that they are being placed on deems desirable than placing them on deems desirable in ERMS. According to management, the grievance supervisor reviewed both restricted sick leave in the ELM and deems desirable and decided that based on the specific leave used by the grievant, restricted sick leave was not the proper path. Management asserted that the grievant had no sick leave and restricted sick leave only covers the use of sick leave and leave without pay. In fact, according to hearing testimony by management, the average hours worked by an employee annually is 2,080, but the grievant over the past year had only worked 862. Management also testified that over the past 90 days, the grievant had 38 incidents of unscheduled leave, 71 over the past 180 days, and 151 in the past year. Management further asserted that deems desirable was the best option in this particular case. Regarding the opinion of Headquarters Strategic Complement Reassignment Labor Relations Manager in the DRT case number cited by the union, management argued that this employee is now retired from the Postal Service, so the service could not obtain clarification on his statement, and the Step B management representative stated that he received the comment via email and he no longer has the email available to him. Management argued that in regards to the statement from headquarters, if an employee does not have sick leave and used annual leave or is AWOL, how does management correct their leave usage? Additionally, according to management, the case cited was regard to multiple carriers at Wernett Station where there was a blanket policy at that specific station of employees exceeded 3 unscheduled absences. Management asserted that the instant case in no way reflects that issue. Finally, management argued that the grievance supervisor did not act arbitrarily as she testified that she wanted the grievant to correct his behavior, and she carefully reviewed which path we should take to do so, and even spoke with the union steward. Management further argued that the union seeks non-compliance to vague settlements, which are not precedent-setting when the reality of these agreements did not come to work. The service contended that after the supervisor exhausted all attempts to correct the grievance behavior, she placed him on deems desirable because the specific stipulations attached to restricted sick leave would not have worked for this specific employee. The service used only the recourse available to them, stating management and in the contract case where the union bears the burden of proof, they have failed to prove that management was non-compliant to the decision in the case file. Therefore, management requests the arbitrator to deny the grievance. So here's the discussion. The instant case involves the alleged noncompliance by management with prior dispute resolutions regarding deems desirable notation and ERMS. According to the union, there have been several grievances filed and resolved by the DRT regarding the appropriate use of deems desirable, and management at Toledo refuses to abide by those decisions which are precedent-setting for the Toledo installation. Management, on the other hand, disputes that they failed to comply with any decisions and contend that the use of deems desirable is appropriate in the instant case and in compliance with the national agreement and the ELM. In this case number, which was cited by the union, the issue statement read, did the Postal Service violate the national agreement, including Articles 3, 10, 19, when they implemented a blanket policy placing employees on deems desirable list, requiring employees to submit medical documentation for absence, and if so, what is the appropriate remedy? The TRT agreed to resolve the grievance and ordered that management shall no longer use the deems desirable option in ERMS as a blanket policy. The parties advised that management should provide the reasonable fact that led to the individual being placed on deems desirable upon request. In the second case cited by the union, the issue statement read, did management violate the national agreement, including but not limited to Articles 3, 10, 15, and 19 when it placed the agreement on deems desirable? If so, what's the appropriate remedy? The DRT resolved that grievance as well and found that management violated the national agreement when they placed the agreement on a deems desirable for a period of 30 days after she informed management she was unavailable to work her regularly scheduled day off on a holiday schedule. In that case, the DRT cited arbitrator Sarah Cannon Holden, and I read that to you. earlier. Arbitrator Holden cited a management exhibit which was produced by the Postal Service in 2010. In that exhibit, the Postal Service reviewed the proper and appropriate use of the deemed desirable option in ERMs. Those guidelines were no doubt developed for the ELM in association with the National Agreement and JCAM. A review of the ELM section 513.36 provides the following information, and I read that to you earlier, when the supervisor deems documentation desirable for the protection of the interests of the Postal Service. The Joint Contract Administration Manual provides the following regarding medical certification, and I read that. Both the ELM and the JCAM describe those situations where documentation may be required for absences of 3 days or less, and that is when, based on that particular absence, the supervisor deems documentation desirable for the protection of the interests of the Postal Service. The language used by both the JCAM and the ELM describe a deems desirable situation based on a particular absence. Neither the ELM or the JCAM describes a deems desirable list or deems desirable option to identify a particular employee and then require them to submit documentation for every absence during a particular period. The language speaks more to identifying a particular absence which might prompt a supervisor to request documentation based on their belief that the Postal Service interests may not be protected. The language of the ELM and JCAM would be in line with the interpretation of the Postal Headquarters representative who provided clarification to the DRT in case number there, cited in the instant case, as well as in line with the guidance and instruction issued by the Postal Service in the July 2010 documented cite by the management and arbitrator Holden's aforementioned case. As a result of the clarification by Postal Service headquarters and arbitrator Holden's inclusion of the guidance and instruction from the Postal Service, the DRT had concluded that management at the Toledo Post Office is inappropriately using the deemed desirable option in ERMs to place a blanket restriction on employees, including the agreement for extended periods of time. The TRT found this was a violation of the National Agreement and ordered management to cease and desist the use of the deemed desirable option in ERMs as a blanket policy. And that's what she does. She agrees with the union and gives them a cease and desist against violation of the prior DRT decisions. Okay, there's a fantastic read. It's got a lot of great things in there for you about deemed desirable if you want to educate yourself on that. It's C33650. 33650. All this stuff is on episode 41. If you go to from8arbitration.com, episode 41, all these things are on there for you to download. All the language, all the reports that JB requests. All of that is on there because they're putting us on deems on every holiday, I guarantee you. Here's the last one. I'm just going to read the discussion. Okay? It's C35201, 35201. Now, you'll want to read the entire position because you're going to get our position, management's position, and this is the one that I took to hearing, and it's in front of arbitrator August as well. And this is her discussion and opinion. Now, we caught them falsifying the 3971s on this, which was really funny. And then also, we requested information, and management told us that we had all the information that we needed. And so it was extremely funny in the hearing when I cross-examined the supervisor. Because JB requested a lot of documentation, and they told us that we had all the documentation we needed to support our position. So it was their determination. We didn't need any more information. They gave us all the information that we wanted, that we needed. Discussion and opinion. The dispute between the parties in the instant case revolves around the grievance call-in on October 10th, where he requested to use 8 hours of sick leave for that day. According to the union, management at Green Hill Station and the National Installation arbitrarily changed the grievance FMLA request for sick leave to reflect leave without pay. Management contended that the agreement had been placed on deemed desirable, and as affirmed in his hearing testimony, Mr. Kuzma failed to provide any documentation to support his absence. The union and the grievant alleged that management had not advised him that he had been placed on deemed desirable, and further had not met with the grievant or discussed with him any attendance deficiencies which would have caused him to be placed on deemed desirable. The union further alleges that management's decision to request documentation for the October 10, 2020 absence was arbitrary and capricious, and the service never notified the grievant that documentation was required. The grievants dispute the fact that the signature on the PS Form 3971 on page 48 of the grievance file is his. Mr. Kuzma contended that he submitted and signed his leave slip on October 13th. Upon his return to work, and management never returned the form back to him, so they just falsified the damn 3971. The form acknowledged by the grievant does not contain any information regarding the required documentation or the fact that the grievant was deems desirable. The ELM Section 513 provides guidance for supervisors and management in the administrative employee leave request, and I've read that to you before. Approval or disapproval of sick leave is determined by the employee's supervisor. The ELM requires that if sick leave is disapproved, the disapproved block on the PS Form 3971 is checked and the reasons given in writing in the space provided. When a request is disapproved, the granting of any alternative type of leave, if any, must be noted along with the reasons for the disapproval. The grievant was absent from work for 1 day, and the ELM provides further guidance on documentation required for such an absence, and she's got 513.361, which we read earlier. The union argued that Mr. Kuzma was never notified by management that he was on deems desirable, and further was not aware that management requested documentation for his October 10, 2020 absence. The union contended that management applies a blanket policy which places a group of carriers on deems desirable without attendance reviews or notification of such status change. The case file contained a grievance resolution dated April 30th in which the parties agreed that management would not use blanket notations for deems desirable and would only use the classification on a case-by-case basis. The agreement was precedent-setting and citable within the Nashville installation. There was no evidence contained in the record which demonstrated that the agreement was on restricted sick leave either. According to the union, management simply arbitrarily decided to disapprove the grievance request for 8 hours of sick leave and changed the time to LWOP. The parties to the national agreement at Article 10 agreed to the following terms regarding sick leave as well. Article 10 leave. D. For periods of absence of 3 days or less, a supervisor may accept an employee's certification as reason for an absence. On April 30th of 2020, pre-arbitration agreement stated that the implementation of deems desirable cannot conflict with the ELM and or Article 10.5. Without notification to the agreement that he was placed on deems desirable, the employee's request would have seen as an incidental request for an absence of less than 3 days, as in Section 5D above, and Mr. Kuzma's anticipation would be that he would not be required to provide documentation to his supervisor. Management argued that the agreement has presented a pattern of call-ins on days before or after a holiday. This type of attendance issue may very well have proven sufficient to warrant being placed on deems desirable during those periods. However, the decision to designate the employee deems desirable must be met with some sort of notification to the affected carrier, and prior warning of the attendance deficiency must be discussed. I'll read that again. Prior warning of the attendance deficiency must be discussed, and that's what we were hammering home. You can't just put us all on deems. There must be some kind of attendance review. You have to have an official discussion. Tell me something I'm doing wrong as far as my attendance. Blanket policies, we will always beat under deems. You can't do it. But even on a case-by-case basis, you have to tell me something. You've got to bring me in the office and say, hey, this is an attendance review in accordance with the ELM Section 5. You're having deficiencies on this. Never happened. There's apparently been issues at this station before on this very point. The grievance file contains several formal resolutions which demonstrate that management made the decision to place the entire care unit in Green Hill Station on deems desirable over a particular weekend. In another period, the service declared all carriers using unscheduled leave to be deems desirable. The ELM and National Agreement reserves the use of such management tools to when the employee is on restricted sick leave or otherwise when the manager justifiably must protect the interests of the Postal Service. The arbitrator does not disagree with management that a pattern of call-ins in conjunction with the holiday could justify deems desirable designation. However, Management must notify the employee prior to the use of such leave, and the designation must be decided on a case-by-case basis in compliance with the April 30th, 2020 pre-arbitration agreement. The ELM actually explains that the very purpose of sick leave is to insure employees against loss of pay. Mr. Kuzman is a 22-year employee of the Postal Service who averred that the only leave slip with his signature is the one he submitted to management on October 30th, 2020. On that leave slip, the agreement requested that he be paid 8 hours of sick leave, to which he was entitled. Unrebutted testimony showed that the agreement signed leave slip was not returned to him. Thus, he was expecting payment for those 8 hours when he received his paycheck on the appropriate payday. To his surprise, 8 hours pay was missing from the paycheck because his supervisor disapproved the sick leave and changed the 8 hours to leave without pay, contrary to the terms of the National Agreement, the ELM, and April 30th, 2020 agreement between the parties. Regarding the union's allegation that management failed to provide information relevant to the processing of instant grievance, that argument was supported by management's own acknowledgement that the union had enough information to conclude that the service did not make a blanket decision to place all carriers at Green Hill Station on deems desirable for October 10, 2020. Although management cited numerous documents in the grievance file, which were part of the union's request, they did not assert that the RFI submitted by the union were fulfilled. The union's issues, as presented, alleged that management violated Articles 17, 15.3a, 31.41, and Postal Service Policy Letter, Step 4, M1517, via Article 19 of the National Agreement. They argued that management failed to comply with the grievance resolutions instructing National Installation Management to cease and desist, failing to provide the union with requested information. That's the reason I want to cease and desist. I'm going to use it against you. I'm not going to be like Barner. You will never hear when I'm executive vice president that I went in any meeting, any setting of any groups of people and said no more cease and desist. That will never happen. Anyway, here again, the union supports their position that this is an ongoing problem in Nashville by the inclusion of numerous Step B decisions and grievance settlements. You're going to say that I weaponize the cease and desist. Yet I've got numerous decisions with cease and desist. Where is it going to be some kind of accountability on management, on their part, to educate them? Quit putting people on deems. Quit putting groups of carriers on deems for extended periods of time. You can't even do that. You can't even educate yourself on that basic thing. Quit doing it. Don't put people on deems any longer. You continue to do it, and it's our fault. You're going to say, y'all quit asking for a cease and desist because we're too fucking stupid to educate ourselves. We have nobody in upper management that can do their fucking job that will say, hey, quit putting groups of people on deems. Stop doing it. They're telling you to quit, and you keep doing it. They're that fucking stupid, and who pays for it? The city letter carrier. Why? Because we got a dumb fuck up there as EVP telling us quit using cease and desist, rather than educating them on the workroom floor, supervisors and managers and postmasters. Here again, the union supports their position that this is an ongoing problem in Nashville. Why? Why is it an ongoing problem in Nashville? Does anybody know why it's an ongoing problem in Nashville? Because they don't educate themselves, and they come to us for relief, and we give it to them in the form of Paul Barner. By the inclusion of numerous Step B decisions and grievance settlements, these are prior violations which are acknowledged by management's advocate. Noteworthy is the fact that the Step B decisions date back to 2018 and earlier, and the arbitrations awards and grievance resolutions date back so far as 2014 through 2015. These examples may not include more recent issues, but it is evidence presented in the case. The service maintained that the union was not impacted because they had everything they needed to determine whether or not management had issued a blanket deems desirable designation for all employees. Irrespective of management's position on the issue, Article 31 requires that the service make available to the union all relevant information necessary for collective bargaining or the enforcement of the national agreement between the parties. And she's got Article 31 language. The numerous DRT decisions and Formal A resolutions included in the case file demonstrated that there are or were issues related to management's failure to comply with such awards and resolutions, particularly as it pertains to requests for information, which can be critical in allowing the union to fully develop grievances and represent their bargaining unit. The union offered the opinion of arbitrator Louise Wolitz in the case here, where she concluded the following regarding noncompliance. And this is one where, when they say that we're trying to weaponize the cease and desist, this is one that I would always use if they said that to me. And it's out of Lake Charles. It seems like management in Lake Charles has determined that when it is not convenient to meet the responsibilities of this language, it may fail to do so and just pay the ODL carriers for the missed work opportunities up to 12 hours in a day or 60 hours in a service week. It reasons that the non-ODL carriers who have been forced to work are getting paid for that work at the overtime rate and hence are not harmed. However, what this fails to consider is that all the carriers are harmed by management's failure to honor its contractual obligation. I'll read that again, because this is to those who say we don't need a cease and desist. Just quit doing a cease and desist, just to make comply. However, what this fails to consider is that all the carriers are harmed by management's failure to honor its contractual obligation. Even if they are paid for the overtime they were not assigned to work but should have been, the ODL carriers are additionally harmed by management failing to honor its contractual responsibilities, which erodes the trust of the carriers in their management. The non-ODL carriers who are forced to work unwanted and unanticipated overtime are harmed by losing the use of that time however they had planned to use it, despite the fact that they are paid for the overtime. All the carriers in the bargaining unit, even those not directly impacted on a particular day, are harmed by the erosion of contractual rights. The collective bargaining relationship is harmed. She's kicking the shit out of them for non-compliance. The union is harmed by having to bear the expense of processing grievances and potential arbitration cases over and over again on the same issue. This harm is clear and evident. It is particularly evident in repeated violations over a long period of time over the same issue and repeated failure to abide by settlements and awards. When she states, the union is harmed by having to bear the expense of processing grievances and potential arbitration cases over and over again on the same issue. You know what would be nice? If we had an arbitrator's decision saying that management's going to pay full freight for that. You continue to bring the union here over and over and over and over again on the same issues because you fail to comply. You're going to start paying for these arbitrations full freight. Wouldn't it be good if we had an arbitrator do that? If we had an arbitrator somewhere in this country say, hey, because y'all won't comply, because you won't educate yourself, because you refuse to go by these past settlements, because y'all won't do that, y'all going to start paying the union's share of these arbitrations. We'll see if that corrects the behavior on the workroom floor as far as supervisors' compliance with a national agreement or managers' compliance with a national agreement or how upper management educates those on the workroom floor. If we had an arbitrator's decision like that, if we could start getting more and more, you will see some addressing of the non-compliance. We did have that in Region 2. Region 2 did have that. And your EVP, Barner, in cahoots with management, called the arbitrator and had them amend that decision. Even though they had several other arbitrators' decisions setting precedential value to that position, that the union would no longer be held accountable for those wages, for that expense. Management will bear the burden of that now. Management will be held accountable for those expenses. If only we had that. If only we had a union fighting for us and not against us on non-compliance, which I will never, ever fucking understand. While the instant grievance is not about ODL and non-ODL carriers, as Arbitrator Wolitz discusses, it does concern a failure on the part of management to comply with previous agreements, Step B decisions, and arbitrations award regarding the issues presented in this case. Management's reliance on and compliance with the parties' April 30th, 2020 pre-arbitration settlement could have prevented the instant grievance. Further, instructional language provided by the DRT should have guided management's actions when fulfilling the union's request for information. RFI should be fulfilled as soon as possible. Management must provide the information requested and a written notification to the union as to why the information cannot be provided or why the information will be delayed. Based on my review of the evidence, facts, circumstances, and the parties' arguments and contentions in the case at bar, the grievance is sustained. Management violated the national agreement and the pre-arbitration agreement signed on April 30th of 2020 when they denied carrier Jonathan Kuzma 8 hours of sick leave pay on October 10th and placed him on the deemed desirable list without prior notice. Additionally, the union met their burden to prove that the service failed to comply with prior grievance resolutions and Step B decisions when they failed to provide information requested by the union. The following remedy is hereby awarded. Management shall cease and desist, thank you, violating Articles 17 and 31 by their failure to provide the union with relevant information for grievance processing. Management shall cease and desist, failing to comply with grievance resolutions, settlements, and awards, particularly the agreement entered into on April 30th, 2020, and at pre-arbitration regarding the use of the deemed desirable designation of national installation. Management shall immediately perform a pay adjustment to grant 8 hours of sick leave to the grievant, Jonathan Kuzma, to replace the 8 hours of leave without pay provided for the date of October 10, 2020. Mr. Kuzma shall also be paid a lump sum of $75 for the delay in processing his leave payment in violation of April 30, 2020, the agreement. All payments and pay adjustments associated with this award shall be processed as soon as administratively possible, but no later than 7 days from the date of the receipt of this decision or award of management. Proof of payment shall be made provided email to NELC formerly Representative Jason J.B. Leith. And so there you have it. 2 decisions. That's C35201, 35201. Go and listen to JB's episode 41. Go listen to it. Okay? Talking about deems desirable. It's on us. Too much on social media talking about it. Deems desirable. How we're going to defeat it. How we're going to address it. Episode 41 on from8arbitration.com. Okay? There's you some salted peanuts. I love you. Light blue. I love you with all my heart. I do. We're going to keep addressing it, man. We're going to keep fighting it. We're going to keep rising up against it, both sides, until we get this shit right. Till y'all respect us again, we're going to rise up against y'all sorry asses. Both sides. Okay? James Henry will be the next president of this union, and we're going to start addressing shit on day one. I'm sick and tired of this shit, man. The refusal to educate my people is unheard of. And we're going to address it. He's a fucking warrior, man. And I cannot wait to get in there. All these naysayers, kiss my ass. When we get in there, we're wrecking shit. Okay? I love you with everything in me, light blue. And we're going to change the course of this union and the workroom floor. We're addressing it. Okay? Y'all have a fantastic day tomorrow. Be very busy day after a holiday. Wednesday, we're coming back with some route protection on Lion's Den. Okay? I love you. Y'all take care of yourself. Be safe out there. Bye.